Hello! In this video series, we will learn how to safely disassemble, inspect, and reassemble the Garrett Honeywell F109 turbofan engine. Originally developed for a military contract, the F109 now serves as a turbine engine maintenance tool for the School of Aviation and Transportation Technology. Before we begin, we need to gather a few key items, including the engine, a toolbox, a parts cart, and a hydraulic puller tool cart. Once you have located the necessary items, we need to perform a toolbox inventory check. The reason for this check is to ensure that all the tools are in their proper shadowed locations. If the tools are within their shadowed locations, the next step is to fill out the toolbox inventory logbook. Please note that this tool check is extremely important and can save you in the industry. Any tools left unaccounted for in the aircraft are FOD and can cause significant damage to aircraft systems. If all tools are accounted for, the team lead should sign and date an entry in the logbook to notify that all tools are present. Next, locate the following items: the disassembly checklist, the disassembly manual, the inspection manual, and the reassembly manual. These documents will be important for locating parts and their location on the engine. The checklist will help you take off only the necessary items and in the correct order. Some of the major components of the engine that we will deal with are the gearbox, the fuel oil coolers, the fuel flow divider, and the exciter box. It is also good practice to ensure that the engine is tightly affixed in the mount and that the clamps are loosened on either side of the mount whenever the engine is rotated. Before beginning disassembly, it is suggested that you take pictures of the locations of major components and plumbing. This can help speed up the process and assist you if you get stuck later. The first step of disassembly is to remove the branch wiring harness. Caution should be taken when removing the harness, as it is old and has worn with time. There may be broken strands that can prick your finger. The cannon plugs attached to the harness should twist freely away from their connections and offer little resistance. The next step is to remove all oil, air, and fuel plumbing on the exterior of the engine. This step requires 3 differently sized wrenches: a 7/16 wrench for fuel, a 9/16 wrench for pneumatics, and an 11/16 wrench for oil. Prior to the removal of plumbing, check to make sure that the system has been emptied of oil. Some of the plumbing spans all the way around the engine, so have someone else hold the opposite end so it won't drop to the ground and become damaged. Once a piece of plumbing comes off the engine, it is good practice to tag its location so it can be identified easily when the time comes to reassemble the engine. A piece of foil or an end plug should also be placed over the open end of the connection. The foil, or plug, helps to keep foreign contaminants out of sensitive systems. Any components that connect to plumbing should be capped off in a similar fashion. Past this point, a 1/4-inch socket will fit the majority of the components unless otherwise specified. A socket or wrench can be used, however, a speed handle is the quickest method. If the handle impedes movement, an extension can be used as needed. The next pieces to be taken off are the shut-off solenoid valve and the NL and NH speed transducers. Caution should be taken when removing the NL speed transducer, as it is spring-loaded and may shoot off if not held down. Task 12, removal of the exciter box, should be completed before Task 8, removal of the oil tank. There are components that run behind the exciter box that make it difficult to remove the oil tank if it is in place. Once the exciter box has been removed, continue down the checklist as normal. Next, we will remove the lower service strut assembly, the temperature sensor, and the NL compensator. Task 12 can be skipped because it was completed prior. Remove the pressure limiter valve assembly and the fuel flow divider and drain valve assembly as well. We will also remove the fuel control assembly and cover all openings with foil. Finally, we may remove the vane fuel pump assembly. Now, we are ready to remove the fuel oil cooler. We will also remove the left-hand and right-hand air oil coolers. At this time, you may also remove the accessory drive gearbox and remove its drive shaft. We are now ready to remove the exit guide nozzle and exit guide shroud. Take note of the orientation of both the exit guide nozzle and the shroud brackets. These should be replaced the same way once the engine is reassembled. Once this step has been completed, you may receive a QA sign-off. Once the QA sign-off has been acquired, further separation with the hydraulic puller may be accomplished. First, the locking collar must be installed. This collar helps to hold the shaft in place during later operations. Once it has been run down onto the shaft, the nuts on the top and bottom of the collar can be tightened down. Once the nuts are snug, the locking collar is bolted in to make sure that it does not move. Next, the engine is rotated vertical, and the spinner is removed. Use the spinner bolts to affix the steel collar to the fan face. This collar is used to protect the fan during the removal process. Next, use the collar extractor to remove the small collar and snap ring from the axle nuts. Once they have been removed, the clockwise and counterclockwise shaft nut wrenches can be installed. Once the shaft nut wrenches are installed, the stretching shaft may be installed. This shaft is left-hand threaded, meaning that counterclockwise rotation will tighten it. Once it is fully threaded, it should be backed off one full turn to prevent damage to the shaft threads. The next components to be installed are the split collar in the hydraulic ram. The split collar is installed with the narrow end facing downward. The hydraulic ram is placed on top of that collar. Next, it is good practice to lay shop rags down underneath the hydraulic ram to prevent hydraulic fluid or other parts from falling into the fan blades. On top of the hydraulic ram, concave and convex washers are placed. These washers must be placed in the correct orientation or severe damage will occur. When these washers are installed correctly, the concave and convex faces should be touching each other. Once these washers have been placed, a shaft nut is threaded over top. Because the bottom of the shaft is left-hand threaded, the shaft should be held still while running the nut down. Once the nut is bottomed out, back it off one full turn to prevent damage. A blast cap is placed on top of the puller just in case the pressure exceeds safe limits. Before working with the hydraulic ram, it is important to ensure that all personnel are wearing the proper PPE. Because of its high pressure, disposable gloves and safety glasses should always be worn while working with the hydraulic puller. Next, locate the two pressure relief valves on the front and rear of the hydraulic puller and ensure that they are both in the closed position. At this time, you may also connect the hydraulic hose to the hydraulic ram. Once the hose has been snugged down, a leak check may be performed on the system. This check is performed by running the ram up to 500 psi and checking if there is any leak. If no leaks are present, run the ram up to 1500 psi. Note that during actual maintenance, this pressure would be 5,000, but because we are only training, a lower pressure is used. Once the pressure is holding steady, obtain two wrench tools and break the tension on the wrenches. They should spin freely. This breaks the tension on the axle nuts, which hold the fan in place. Now that the tension has been broken, you may relieve the pressure on the hydraulic ram. You may now disassemble the hydraulic puller and remove it from the engine. With the hydraulic puller out of the way, you may now remove the shaft nuts. Note that the axle nuts are spinning freely, and remove them. A fan extractor may now be installed. Use the provided 1 1/4 inch wrench to run the extractor down and pop the fan free. The fan may now be safely removed from the engine. Now, we will remove the inner flange of the fan case and the inner flange. Caution should be used since the inner flange is very sharp and poses a risk to cutting hands. We will now remove the fan duct by removing the bolts remaining on the outer flange. Once removed, stuff rags into the inlet to ensure that no debris, or FOD, falls into the core of the engine. With this, our disassembly checklist is complete, and inspection may begin. There are various components we can inspect for damage, including the fan duct, gearbox, and speed transducers. Refer to the inspection manual if you are confused or need more components to inspect. Congratulations! You have completed disassembly.